Warm welcome to the meeting. I'd like to welcome DMS, Rebecca, Anna, ACPSQ, and Superintendent, beg your pardon, Monica Ao Young, and her colleagues to this meeting. Mr. Douglas Lam has some other arrangement, and he has quit the IPCC. We register a vote of thanks to Mr. Lam. And also Mr. Paul Lam, SC. As you're aware, Mr. Lam is the Secretary for Justice designate, and we wish Mr. Lam every success in his new endeavor, and we'd like to register a vote of thanks for his contribution. I have received apologies from Mr. Paul Lam, Mr. Lee Man-ban, Mr. Lai Chai-man, and Mr. Yu Wah-yong, and they all sent in their apologies. Item number 1, confirmation of the minutes. We skipped one meeting because of the COVID. It was at the height of COVID. I would like to minimize the chance of infection. I'd like to thank everyone for their contribution. The COVID has become stable, and I think we still have to work hard to fight against the pandemic. And shall we endorse the minutes? Second, item 2, please presentation on IPCC's recommendations on the use of force. Madam Chair, members, in relation to the recommendation on the use of force, there are 12 recommendations there. And we'd like to report to members the progress. Regarding the enhancement measures, on the 30th of May, we have invited members to visit us and to understand better the situation.
So we will conduct a kind of training to enhance their response to this kind of event. And based on this interview and visit, we have invited Perry to give us a brief report of the situation. Thank you. Chair and members, I am the Senior Superintendent of the Police Force, Terry Fong. And I'm glad that we can have a report for the IPCC's recommendations on use of force and some of the follow-up actions. Chair and then some of the members have visited our tactical training school at Fan Leng, and then received by our the chief superintendent, and then give them a very detailed presentation of the various aspects of the use of force. And the presentation takes about 20 minutes, and then we will give a summary of that follow-up. Of course, well, these are all related to the use of force within the police force. And then I will also present the enhancement measures on 4 different aspects. It's like equipment, guidelines and training, command and coordination, publicity and transparency. And these are all follow-ups of the police force. And lastly, I would like to bring forth some key messages. IPCC has 52 recommendations, and there are 13 related recommendations on the use of force. And then some are related to equipment, irritant devices, and pepper spray, etc. And there are also recommendations on the training. There are altogether 4 recommendations. The other is about command and coordination. There are altogether 3 recommendations. And on publicity and public understanding, transparency, there are 2 recommendations on this. So the 13 relevant recommendations has been enhanced and then actually taken action in accordance. And there are altogether 15 improvement measures so as to respond to the concern of IPCC. Please understand that IPCC reflected the public concerns. Therefore, we have attached great importance to the report. And on the use of force, we have made very detailed and comprehensive review, study, and then some comparison as well. And on the study that include internal guidelines, training curriculum, overseas practices as a benchmarking, and then strategy of publicity. Well, we thought that the overall review needs to be really detailed, and so that we can rightfully respond to the different recommendations and a better understanding of the work of the police. Now, I would like to give a little introduction on each of these key areas. First of all, is about the equipment. And we noted that there are certain concerns on the equipment, on the tear gas, pepper spray, or devices, etc. Related to FOO handling of the public events. And then there are actually substantial concerns on tear gas. We need to emphasize that it is very effective to maintain a safety distance between the crowd and the police. And the main target is actually to quell the violence between the police and the public, and to minimize casualty and other damages. And during the FFOO, we also study about the tear gas content. There are significant report and also academia studies on this. Even for places like the Chinese University and the Polytechnic University, the samples we collect there have not reported excess of those toxins. And then from the perspective of the science, that in terms of the time they burn, and then also the content, that is not enough to cause damage impact on the people. And of course that there are the cases that the police have encountered and also the experience in person, the impact on the tear gas. They know that within the 30 minutes with the purifying of the air, and then all of the symptoms would disappear. And we hope that for the rioters who were in contact with tear gas, they would escape from the site and then effectively respond to the target of using tear gas. And then looking into the other places, and there are very frequently used, like in Paris, tear gas has been used. It was in 2022 in the Freedom Convoy protest in Paris. And also in 2021 in the Capitol Hill riots in the U.S., we also saw that the police has deployed tear gas in driving away the rioters. And from press report, we see that police even in the indoor areas, they also deployed tear gas as a kind of equipment to keep a safe distance. And despite that tear gas has been very frequently used, but based on the concern of IPCC, we have made a very detailed review and continuous review. Although that in those confrontation and also in the violent situation, the choice is not on the police to use force. But we also noted that it will create a collateral impact on people around. So on the use of equipment, we have made a very in-depth review and also to provide other less lethal weapons for the police force. And taking references of many situations in other parts of the world, and then also on the impact on the surrounding, which we call collateral report. As you can see that the pepper ball and some other very newly acquired equipments, they can reduce the collateral impact. And all this equipment have been used and deployed by police in other places around the world. And you can see that in the social media, we also talk about the peppered water ball. And we also hope that we can come up with some guidelines so that we can reduce the collateral impacts if situation arises. There are the choices we have adopted so far is commensurate to international standard and practice. You can see in the pictures, it's October last year. In the social media, we have make an introduction on how we use peppered water so that the public will understand better. And then we are quite relieved because that the equipment and then the way we use it are safe and then commensurate with international standard practices. And we have actually make a small clip in the social media, and I want to show it to you now.
A few moments later.
啱啱中嗰陣時咧，確實係有啲咳啦，不停咁咳嗽啦，甚至乎對眼係好唔舒服嘅。咁而家咧經過大量嘅水沖洗咗之後咧，就開始對眼就舒服嘅，而我亦都冇任何嘅不適啦。而家係確實係個身仲係繼續有啲灼熱嘅感覺嘅。
So in the clip, you can see that, as I just mentioned, that about 20 minutes with water cleaning the impacted area, then the uncomfortable feeling and other discomfort will very quickly disappear. As I said, there are the other enhancement measures. We review on the equipment, and of course that needs the special guidelines and trainings to enhance the capacity of the police force. And then with the comprehensive review of internal guidelines, and then we see that they are all commensurate with international standards, and the relevant department were laid down by the international organizations. And then we have reviewed the use of force guidelines and training curriculum. And then there are the assessments and then a series of enhancement and training. For instance, we required our staff that in the use of force, they needed to have a very good consideration on the impact on the area affected. And then they also needed to make assessment on the exit strategy of the rioters.
But before using force, like in the confined places, MTR stations, and the shopping malls, we require the officers to have more assessment. In our training courses for the tactical unit, we require our colleagues to follow the guidelines and take the decision appropriately. We hope that through consistent training, we can reinforce the colleagues' memory there. Again, this is commensurate with the practice in other parts of the world. We will continue to review the guidelines and improve the training programs to properly equip the officers so that they can rise to the challenges in future. We understand that only guidelines without training would not be enough. So in accordance with the IPCC's recommendation, we have enhanced our training. We hope that our colleagues would be familiar with the legislation and also understand the guidelines regarding the use of force, and we will be presenting the cases to the officers so that when they're dealing with the large-scale demonstrations or riots, they will be able to handle better. We also have the scenario-based training, and we do encounter emergency situation, and we would equip the officers with the ability to assess the situation, particularly in dealing with riots and large-scale POEs. We've introduced new training elements. Like this is a 360-degree scenario. We hope that with the new training program, we will enable the colleagues to feel as if they're in a real-life situation. This will test the command abilities and the deployment and the communication with fellow colleagues. Have a look at this clip, please.
咁片段所見呢
Now from this clip, the command officers is situated in a 360-degree screen, and this is testing his command abilities. And the commander feels as if he's in a real-life situation. The experience he builds up and the experience that he gathers would enable him to make the best possible deployment. Moving on to the third enhancement, it has to do with the deployment and the command abilities. In order to enhance the command and deployment abilities, we have upgraded the command cadre. We will be selecting the right people, the people with the right caliber, and there will be opportunities for training and drills to enhance their abilities to respond to the situation. As to the coordination ability, we have conducted a detailed review in the large-scale events. There would be a lot of manpower to be deployed covering a vast area, and the commander will have to understand the situation, particularly in the large-scale riot situation. If we have to use some tear gas to disperse the crowd, we may not be able to get to grips with the risk of escape, and we would allow the officers with the relevant experience and expertise to deploy the officers. It is hoped that through these measures we can optimize the coordination ability and deploy the manpower in a more suitable manner. In terms of coordination abilities, we understand that we need to enhance the internal coordination. We also need to enhance the coordination with the members of the public, like the dissemination of information. And the police can take advantage of the social media to disseminate in a timely manner the relevant information to the public. And where necessary, we can issue advisories and warnings. In a riot situation, in particular, when tear gas has to be deployed to disperse the crowds, we will step up the tactical units training. We would issue warnings and also make the public aware of the escape or dispersal route. And through these, we will enhance the coordination ability, and at the same time, we can let the public know about the police instructions. The fourth area for enhancement is about the public understanding and the publicity. Having reviewed the recommendations of the IPCC, we will enhance the public understanding in public and the publicity. There will be proactive communication to enhance the ability to maintain public order. And where necessary, we will deploy force, and we would hope that the public will understand all these. We are disseminating the information relating to the police through the social media, and we also hope that the members of the public would understand various aspects of the police. Now we have this training series for the members of the public to understand more about the day-to-day work of the police. The police training is regarded as confidential. Now, without compromising the training of the police, we would let the public know more about the police training. In the clip, an inspector is taking part in a tactical training and use the tear gas. You get to see how the colleagues taking part in the training will have to feel the effect of the tear gas.
我而家會上胡椒噴劑嘅訓練。
警務人員喺使用低殺傷力武器嘅時候，除咗要接受相關嘅訓練之外
，When using less lethal weapon, the police will have to feel firsthand the effect of the less lethal weapon, and so that they can have a better empathy. We hope that through the explanation to the members of the public would have better understanding of the police. On the 30th of last month, members have visited the tactical unit. They visited some of the special purpose vehicles, and would like to take this opportunity to explain to members all the different equipment. And we showed members a drill to deal with a large-scale demonstration, and members did have the first-hand experience of this kind of event. Now, this is a kind of intense and high-risk place, and the officers will have to stay cool, calm, and collected, and assess the situation on the ground and come up with the best possible deployment measure. I have put together a clip of about a minute or so, so the members can have a look at the event that day. In 2020, the IPCC published the Thematic Study Report on POEs in relation to the use of force. In order for the IPCC to have better understanding, the CAPO, together with the tactical unit, on the 30th of May, invited the IPCC members to visit the headquarters of the technical unit. Members were briefed about the measures like increasing the training and enhance the coordination ability and the dissemination of information to the public. And the instructors also showed members the less lethal weapons and the new devices, and explained to members how we should deploy these devices, and also the training arrangement. The instructors showed members the scenario-based training and how they used force to disperse the crowd. And also the coordinator allowed the reporters, the journalists, to conduct their news activities without any interruption. And all the 4 members shared their experience, and they said they understood the hardship of the frontline officers. This visit enabled members to understand more about the police work. They will facilitate their work at the IPCC. I'd like to highlight some of the key messages. We understand that the recommendation of the Thematic Study Report reflect public concerns. The police attach a great deal of importance to this. As to the use of force, the police have reviewed the situation and came up with some internal guidelines. And we had detailed study on the use of our devices and also compared ourselves with the rest of the world. The policies, the guidelines on the use of force and the technical details are put together in a proportionate manner, and they are commensurate with the international standards. Be that as it may, we are prepared to listen to different views. So we have already put together a whole series of enhancement measures in the light of the IPCC recommendations. Finally, we would like to have better transparency through the media and different channels, so without compromising the operational work, we will disseminate more information so that the public will understand more about the police work, not least the use of force. The public should understand that where necessary, the police would find it necessary to use force, and would like to disseminate the right message to the public and protect public safety in a better way, and to resume law and order. Madam Chair, I hope that this briefing would enable members to have a better understanding of the follow-up work in relation to the recommendations of the Thematic Study Report. I welcome questions. Thanks very much. Anything you'd like to share? Any questions from around the table? Vice Chair, Mr. Chen. I've got a question for the Senior Superintendent. Now, once the use of force is completed, that the operation may be a success, will there be any review mechanism to look at the event to see whether you can learn from that to do a better job for the future? Thanks very much for your question. I fully appreciate your concern. All along, with regard to the use of force, we do have very stringent requirements. It's not the case that the officers can use force and that's it. We do have a report form. If force has been used, the officers will have to fill out a report, and this would have to be countersigned by the supervisors. As to the IPCC's recommendations, we already said that we do have a whole series of less lethal weapon options. Now, the officers will have to fill out a report, and we have made some amendments. And for the less lethal weapons, we have included in the report, and officers who used force will have to submit a report to the senior. We have to make sure that our supervisors will understand under what circumstances the officer did use force.
So the overall mechanism is to ensure that the use of force by the police is under very strict check and balance and very strict scrutiny. Any other question? Mr. Chan, yes. Thanks, Chair. Senior Superintendent Fang, thanks for your report. You mentioned that there are 52 recommendations by IPCC. I think the last batch is about guideline and use of tear gas, and also the pepper spray launcher, etc. You already report on them and saying that you have been continuously introducing low lethal equipments. So in the training, under what circumstances, which equipment to be deployed, and that means how do you make a combination of the different equipments under different circumstances appropriate for so that you can create a safe distance between the crowd and the police, etc. And then, of course, the different low lethal weapons have different impact and different targets. So how do you train with a strategy so that the police knows what equipments to bring, in what circumstances, and would there be a package of different strategy for that? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, the chair and the members visit our academy last month. We have repeatedly introduced our different equipments, particularly the newly introduced low lethal weapons. In our tactical training school, different staff have different equipments. Some are for internal security, some are for POEs, and then so that there are different kinds of packages. And then for the training, we would like to actually to conduct it in a principle-based kind of guideline, so that our frontline colleagues will know that under different circumstances, and then they can refer to different kind of principles and to equip themselves. Of course, that the low use of force is one of our guiding principles. And then we would like to make the further enhancement on scenario-based training. As I reported just now, you can see that there are the different kinds of training. There are daily against crime scenario when they are on beat. And so that they will know what kind of equipment to use. And also in the clip, you can see the 360-degree scenario. We in cases where there is the mass POEs, and then what options they have in terms of use of equipment, and about tear gas and some low lethal weapons. We need to emphasize that tear gas, according to our experience and also the international standard, it is still an effective low lethal equipment to be deployed. But we also have noted that the public is rather concerned about the collateral impacts, so we have also to make new orders And then there are other low lethal the devices like the pepper balls and also pepper water, and the impact is relatively low. So we would like to deploy different equipments to achieve our objective and to make the least collateral impact in the surrounding as possible. So there are the series of this enhancement and also the optimization measures. Any other questions? Thanks, Chair. I have two questions. Just now, if the police have used any sort of force, that you need to make a report on those actions. And then according to the complaints that we receive, there are cases where the frontline colleagues forget to make those reports. So I think that you need to remind your frontline staff that when they have deployed forces and then take actions, they need to make report. And then there are cases that is not pursuable. And then, of course, we need to appreciate the efforts of the police, that you have made a very comprehensive effort in the reviewing and responding to the recommendations. Well, I think that we can draw an end to this report. We have made the report, and the CE has pledged to follow up. And then it is said that we can draw an end to this. So how do we do that? How can we? Who is to decide whether that we can close the book? So I'd respond to these two questions. First of all, I would like to thank IPCC. That advice on the different complaints. Just now, you talked about the situation of making reports. We have already improved our internal communication, and then hence the knowledge of our colleagues, including when they deployed the low lethal weapons, they need to make a report. That's a must. And then our supervisors will ensure that this will be followed up. The secondly, about the thematic report. Later on, Ms. Aoyang will report on the overall situation of that thematic study. And this time, we officially report on the 52 recommendations by that thematic study. And the CAPO has already followed up each one of these recommendations. And then Ms. Sito will report to you one by one. And the Chief Superintendent will also respond to the overall recommendation, and we also have made some follow-up on that. So if there are still outstanding concerns over that, we are more than happy to respond to that. The Secretary has reminded us, or the report is the Bureau of the Security of Security Secretary, in fact, take the proactive actions in submitting it to the CE. Okay, I have two questions as well. As Mr. Ye also raised, and I echo that. Secondly, thanks, Mr. Fang, for your report. And I see that the anti-riot training, which is a scenario-based, they are really good. I just want to ascertain that the various training you have are not for just freshmen, right? Is it for all frontline police, and then it is continuous, right? Even if you are in the police for the 20 years, 30 years, you still have to go through those trainings. Please wait a little bit. I'd want to open the file and then let you see the picture. Yeah, firstly, thank you for your question. The training curriculum is very diverse. You can see that the top right hand picture is about shooting. And each one of our police force need to participate regularly before they are qualified to use gun. And other than that, we will go to a mini shooting ground, and so that if there are any crime cases, for instance, like family violence or drunken, events, and then also robbery, then of course there are different scenarios. We need actually to test the colleagues whether and they know which kind of equipment to deploy. And sometimes they might just be enough to use tear gas and not rifles as such. Our trainers will have the interactive activities with the police. If they use the right equipment, they will receive a certain kind of response, and then afterwards there will be discussion and on whether that they have made a decision or that there are still improvements they could make. And so all this training is required for each of our police force. And other tactical squad training, of course, they need to participate in the tactical squad training. And when they are promoted, and they still need to maybe sometimes participate in the tactical squad, and then they all the trainings will include all these basic elements, and of course there will be new elements, so that they can commensurate to the different rank and different task. And then for different squads, and then within a year they have regular training, and which carried out in Fanling. And then we will simulate some POEs and even riots, so that our colleagues will be more familiarized in their daily work, and so that they can refresh their experience in case there are POEs. And if there is a need to use force, so that they need to refresh their consideration and their decision in using force. Mabel and Mr. Chan. So both of them are Chans. Thanks. First of all, thanks very much, Mr. Fang. I would like to talk about the publicity and transparency. I'm really glad that you are very proactive in doing the communication and like an online platform to do the communication. My question is about the content. I think that they are very useful for the public. I would also want to know more that about the effectiveness of the communication, and so that you might need to make adjustment to the different ways of doing the communication to increase the effectiveness and the impact. So, Mr. Fang? Let me respond, and then to see whether the colleagues have anything to add. Thanks very much for your question. We note that the public, in general, is very interested in our work. They want to know more about our daily work, and then also of the training. As I said in my report, that we will actually classify some of the content, and then sometimes that it makes us look very mysterious. But we hope that through different means that the public or that the police the task is not compromised, that we will make it more transparent.
I think the best way is to use the social media, as Ms. Monica Young said in one of the clips. You saw the use of pepper spray, and in fact 430,000 views or viewers have seen this particular clip, and this is really encouraging. We hope that through these means we can let the public know about the training. Now, in that clip, we had about 20 seconds, but in the social media, we will be publishing the full-length clip. Not only do we document the use of pepper spray, the inspectors taking part in this technical training will have to undergo the training on the use of force, and there was also training of the use of other equipment, and there were interviews and other clips as well. We hope that through other means other than the social media, you probably notice that we also worked with the TV broadcasters to introduce the selection, the training, and so on. As I said, on the principle of not compromising operational work, we will try our best to let the public know more about the operation. By way of information, at the previous joint meeting, we invited the senior superintendent, Mr. J, to introduce the use of social media and the effectiveness. Now we have the social listening device. We do monitor the public sentiments and also the public reaction to our action, and we do take on board all these views. So the PPRB has been monitoring the situation on a regular basis. And we mentioned the less lethal weapons, like the pepper spray launcher. 400,000 or so viewers have seen that. And we would gather public views as to whether this is a good approach. And we do gather public comments. In fact, we keep an eye on the public views. Mr. Chen. Madam Chair, thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank CAPO and also the police for arranging the interview, and we get to understand more about the use of force. Now I notice, however, that in the majority of the cases, the weapons are getting less and less lethal. It's not a question of good or bad. I notice that in the recent past, we saw all these events taking place, and we haven't seen any serious casualties. And this is really commendable on the part of the police. In the POEs or riots or serious disturbances, do the police have any categories? We're not talking about a big group of people out and about in demonstration posing serious problems. Now, most of the weapons are less lethal, and there may be a gap somewhere along the line where between the lethal and less lethal weapons there is too much of a big gap. Now, for lethal weapons, we would consider them to be police pistols and guns, and you tend to use less lethal weapons. But when you come across any serious disturbances involving a huge number of people, would the police have enough capability? Now you are making the weapons less lethal, and the next way up would be lethal weapons. And now the question I'm trying to ask is, if the police finds it awkward to answer this question, you can ignore my question. But I'm trying to highlight this particular scenario. And I have considered all these and would like to put this question. Right? Would the police address the question? Now, this is an important subject. The police are there to maintain law and order and to make sure that they can do their job. Now, we paid a visit to the PTU, and we understand that one of the key considerations is to minimize the lethality. Now, Mr. Chen is suggesting that if necessary, force would have to be used. What's the general situation like? Right, thank you very much for the question. I'd like to reiterate that in terms of the use of force, we do have very rigorous guidelines and principles. Now, we have guidelines on the circumstances under which force would have to be used. It's only as a last resort that we will use force, and we will have to use the lowest level of force in proportion to the situation. As to the use of force, we in the force do review and revisit that on a regular basis. In recent years, we actually conducted a review, and we have included all these less lethal equipment that I referred to in my presentation. Now, as soon as we achieved our purpose, we will stop the use of force, and that would provide a wider range of options to our colleagues. If they have these options, they will have more options to deal with the task in their hands to maintain public order. Any further questions? DMS, Ms. Rebecca Lam. Well, I can take this opportunity to let members know that the Hong Kong Police Force are fully confident that we will be able to deal with all kinds of situations, including crimes and disturbances and riots. Like Senior Superintendent Fang said a moment ago, we have introduced all these less lethal weapons. As Mr. Fang said, this is to provide more options to the officers so that they will decide on the kind of force to deal with the kind of situation that they are facing. I can tell members that with these less lethal weapons, definitely it will stand us in good stead in our day-to-day work. And we do have guidelines on the use of force, and we do have the public safety angle built into our guidelines. Now, we are fully confident that we do have the ability to do so, and we do provide proper training to the officers for them to use a wide variety of equipment with which to more effectively handle their work. Any further comments? Vice Chair. Madam Chair, thank you. Well, the police are doing a brilliant job, and they have been exercising a lot of self-restraint. Now, the more restrained you are, the more outrageous the rioters can be. Of course, if you provide more options, it would be a good idea. Of course, I would support less lethal weapons to be deployed. I'd like to point out that this is a balancing act. You've explained the response to the 52 recommendations. One of them is we recommend discussion with the media, and maybe you can build up some protocol to avoid any potential disputes. It seems to be that hasn't been achieved. Is it the case that this cannot be followed up any further? Right, Madam Chair, thank you. Recommendation 9. Now, regarding the code of practice, we have tried very hard. We've liaised with 13 organizations and representatives of media organizations. We consulted them. They've expressed their views that at this point in time, there is no need for a protocol to be formulated with the police. And where necessary, they are of the view that they should put together the guidelines themselves. However, we will not leave it at that. We will be formulating measures to enhance communication with the media representatives in order to minimize any trouble. And we've also increased the manpower that is dealing with the media. At the May 30th scenario-based drills, you saw that the media liaison officer also has some training together with the technical unit. So we do have the training. Through these training and through the increase in manpower, there will be more communication with the media in order to achieve a better consensus. Thank you. Any further views? Now, we have made 52 recommendations, and this is the last batch, and that covers all the 52 recommendations. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, or any questions that you'd like to have for the police? If not, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next agenda item, number 3, matters for information. A, CAPO's monthly statistics. B, also statistics. And that's complaints arising from the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance related POEs. C, update on the 52 recommendations. And D, CAPO's criminal and disciplinary checklist. Appendix 5 and 6. Will the please brief us on those items, please? Members, I'd like to report the complaint numbers. In 2021, we have received 1,416 reportable complaints, up by 205 compared with 1,211 in the previous year. In terms of complaints, 101 cases are serious allegations, or 7%. Minor allegations are 1,315, or 93%. In 2022, for the first 5 months, we have received 430 reportable complaints, down by 86 compared with 516 in the previous year. And compared with 2020, which was 478, down by 10% or 48 cases. For the first 5 months, there are 191 cases that were dealt with and representing 11%.
And then there is the 4 cases more than 2020. In the first 5 months, and then in the total, the reportable complaint are mainly the numbers, including circled by the red. They include the offensive language, etc. And then they occupy like 96%. And then the others are like the unnecessary use of authority, the 3 cases. And then the yellow part are the misconduct, and then the improper manner, 39.1%. And the remaining, the 26 is like very serious complaint. The gray one is the assault is about 21 cases, 4.9%, and then 3 cases of unnecessary use of duty, authority, 0.7%. There is no report of threat, and then the first 5 the allegations include the neglect of duty. There's up to the 287 misconduct. There are the smaller cases of the misconduct, and there are the offensive use, 2 cases less than last year, and the unnecessary use of authority are rather low, and there is no the cases on threat. And this the number and the trend for the first 5 months of this year. Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any question? Thanks, Chair. I then have an observation about the pie chart. It's about the number of complaints. And if in the same chart, maybe that the time is not commensurate. It's really that we would like to see the result of the examination. And then if we have both together, then maybe there are cases we cannot find the complainants, etc. Then maybe that this number is not legitimate, because some of the substantive case might be lower than the complaint we receive, because sometimes that we cannot just pursue. And then there might be the allegations on the stop and search, and then about improper manner, but we cannot find the complainants. So how can we present a better picture of those complaints? Thanks for your recommendation. Maybe in September we can modify this pie chart so that we can reflect the actual situation. Thank you. As what the Vice Chair suggests, that maybe if we can also present the results, then we will know the situation better. Now that we have the number of the complaints only. And in fact, that I have actually appealed, saying that, of course, we need to note down all the complaints, but we need actually to follow up. So I think that the results is very important. Okay, the Secretary. Thank you. Well, CAPO. No, the IPCC and the Secretary have already record all the complaints and also the results of examination. And we can see that there is a lag between the two. We can see that the number reflected here will take time to reach a kind of conclusion. So we might not be able to reflect the real situation of the situation. I hope that there will be another pie chart to reflect on the examination and the reclassification of the results. and so that we will be updated on the situation, and then we can compare the two, whether that among certain complaints are non-substantiated and some have withdrawn, etc. And then I think that I know the IPCC has that, and also that the Secretary also have those kind of records. If there's no further questions, then shall we continue? Is Mr. Chen going to do that? Chair and members, well, based on the FFOO-related POE until the 31st of May, we will receive a total of 1,949, and then there are 9,143 complainants. And about the 31.7 the reportable complaint, and then 673 complainant, and 68.3% are notifiable complaints, and then involve 8,470 complainants. And there are many minor complaints for those reportable complaints. And like for the light purple, there are 185 misconduct, gray 105, and neglect of duty. In polite, 42 cases, 6.8%. In polite and improper manner, 11 cases. And then there are a very serious complaint is on the right. 136 are the unnecessary use of authority, 22%. And the gray is assault, 114 cases, 18.4%. The threat and the fabrication of evidence, 11 and 2 correspondingly. And then the reportable cases among the 618 cases, we have already submitted to IPCC 583 cases. That means 94.3%. And in this 583, 536 are already approved. Among those have not submitted, the 35 cases, they are still under jurisdiction. And then 3 already completed SJ, and 2 are still under investigation. The other 2 are on the process of finalizing the report. And in fact, these 2 already submitted to the Secretary. And these are the third progress and also the situation. Any question? If not, then we will continue the report. Monica, the chair and members, good afternoon. I would like to report on the follow-up of the thematic study. Based on the 52 recommendation, we have been very actively follow up, and then also we make a special report by the task force, and then already submitted the 7 progress report. We have actually report on the 35 follow-up measures. And the new report covers the 13 measures. And then these 13 recommendations are 1 to 4, 6 to 8, and then the 15 and 40. And then together with the previous follow-up, we have already completed the 52 recommendations, and then the 78 new measures. The 7th report have 8 recommendations on one is the use of force, and then there are 3 new measures. One is to make additional guidelines and explain clearly what circumstances actually and incur the use of tear gas and other irritant equipments. There are also to enhance the training to enhance the decision making, and also the capacity of responding to rioting situation. The second is about the use of pepper balls and other assessment, and then they need to make the alert and then warnings. And the fourth is about whether that we can have very clear guideline on the use of force. And then in the consultation of the US, Australia, and the UK, we know that they also are adopting the similar guidelines to respond to different circumstances. So we will continue to use and then to enhance the scenario-based training. We noticed that overseas institutions also using the tear gas in quelling riots. And then it is evident that we don't need actually to establish a special task force to follow up on the toxicity of tear gas. But because of the population, the density of Hong Kong, and then we continued to study the impact of low lethal equipment to reduce collateral impact on the surrounding. And then the other is about the internal guideline, and then on the riot participation and the explanation of the public order ordinance so that we can differentiate rioters and non-rioters. And then existing legislation and also the internal instructions of the police are quite aligned, so we don't need any other guidelines on the use of force in case of riots. The third is about the internal command structure. And then one is to revise the new command structure. It includes the strategy, action, and then tactic. So we have actually devised a new selection process and also assessment process so that our staff will maintain a high quality on knowledge and also on their road of responsibility. And then lastly, on the fourth area, is about the public communication. We have a new measure. The PPLB have made a series of clips and making use of very light and entertaining ways to explain to the public. Broadcast in the Facebook, IG, and other social media platform to make our situation more transparent. And last October, we also make a clip on low lethal weapons. It's on the OC, the launch, and then the total viewed count is 210,000. And last month, we have invited the chair of IPCC and members to visit our technical unit training school. We have introduced and then present to members different newly acquired equipments, and then also demonstrate a scenario-based drill. And so that the members will know the principle of the use of force. In conclusion, the police have already followed up on the 52 recommendations and then the 78 new measures, including the internal, the training, public communication, etc., to demonstrate our capacity in responding to a mass event. We have enhanced our regular procedures and also the other measures so that we can perform better in the public order, keeping public order, and also increase our knowledge in POE law enforcement. And based on the different circumstances of the different events, and whether that is static or equipment, we have make appropriate revise and also enhancement. This is my report. Any question? Any comment? Secretary General. Thank you, Monica. I would like to say that this is already the 7th in our joint meeting, a report by CAPO. In the past 6 meetings, they have made different reports. Our team, in fact, is responsible for drafting the report. So we have been following up each one of these recommendations and enhancement to see whether they correspond and then they are effective and impactful.
I'd like to report to members that I've read through them, and each and every one of them can handle the situation. However, I've got 2 questions. First, when we compiled the report, we mentioned that it should be scenario-based. And right now it is a principle-based use of force. Now in 2011, the UK riot handling report devoted a lot of coverage to that, and they made recommendations to the police in the UK. Now my first question is, can you give us more information about the considerations in this regard? That's question number 1. Second, about the tear gas, I understand that the police basically adopt the international standard in considering how to handle our recommendations. We understand that this is very much an international practice as far as the use of tear gas is concerned. We are commensurate with the international standard. In order to assuage public concerns about the use of tear gas, now from the point of view of handling complaints, I know that there are complaints about the use of tear gas and also the implications on the public health arising from the use of tear gas. So are there any situations where the public's concerns about the implications of using tear gas, whether this is justified? If there are complaints from the members of the public, I think we have to explain to the public whether tear gas is harmful to the public. On the first question about the scenario-based guidelines, as we said a moment ago, we have looked at the European and the US situation. They also adopted the principle-based guidelines. We understand that the IPCC made a recommendation about a scenario-based principle. Now, the UK police haven't adopted this, although they have looked at the situation. Eventually, they didn't adopt this principle. So we are sticking to the principle-based operation. Now, for this scenario-based training, we set great store by the 360 scenario for the VR training. We enable the frontline staff in connection with the less lethal weapons. That the police officers will adopt the principle-based scenario, and this is the best situation, that's the best principle to adopt. On the second question about the use of tear gas, now you mentioned the concerns of the members of the public in the context of complaints. Now, in Mr. Fang's presentation, it was said that the use of tear gas is commensurate with international practice in dispersing the rioters. In the Capitol Hill event, they deployed tear gas in an indoor environment, and that didn't attract a lot of complaints about the irregularities. So in the light of overseas experience and literature, We are of the view that there is no expert advice to say that the tear gas would constitute harmful effect. So the focus of our attention is to step up our public education and publicity. We'd like to enhance the transparency, and through the social media, we hope that the members of the public would be able to understand in a light-hearted manner the issue about tear gas. We do have a real live demonstration to show the public what the situation is like. Right, any further questions? Vice Chair? I'd like to respond to the tear gas. I've seen some of the complaints. Many of the complainants are living upstairs. Now tear gas is deployed and they lodge complaints against the use of tear gas. I've never been involved in these kind of activities. I saw from TV that you raised the red or purple banners, and there are commanders who will be using the loud hailers. Will you remind the people upstairs to close the windows? Now you can say that you've been reminded. Who's going to address the question? I think people, if they open the windows, they can hear the noises. Well, actually, in early June 2019, the police did not give the residents in the vicinity any warning when tear gas was deployed. But in September, or before December, when the police were aware of POE in certain areas, through the PCRO, they will inform the elderly homes that they have to keep the windows closed because of the upcoming deployment of tear gas. So in these 52 recommendations, we would remind the commanders all these tactical considerations. Like prior to operations being mounted, if they were aware of the sensitive locations, they should disperse the area. And also, do they have to dispersal operation, or do they have to resort to containment operation? They have to take a decision in order to minimize the nuisance to the people nearby. Mr. Chen. Madam Chair, Mr. Frankie Yik put the question a moment ago in the 52 recommendations. One of them is that when large POEs happen, the police can warn the members of the public on the social media about the deployment of tear gas. And therefore some precautionary measures can be taken in the 52 recommendations, and this has been mentioned. And the police have also made the response. Thank you. Mr. Chu? Well, we have a lot of questions. Thank you. Thanks very much, Monica. CSP. I'd like to confirm that for these 52 recommendations, they have been concluded, and all the 78 measures are going to be very important. Will there be any more joint meeting? Is the file going to be closed? Indeed, we have put out the report. The task force under the Security Bureau has already completed their work. Of course, we will monitor the joint meeting to see whether there are any further questions to follow up. However, members' questions and our replies will be reported to the task force for their information. But work-wise, we have already completed the work. Any supplement? If not, shall we move on? Criminal and disciplinary checklist. The checklist highlighting all the information has been submitted to the Secretary. I've got nothing to add there. Thank you. This is a routine item, the criminal and disciplinary checklist. If not, any other business? We don't have any AOB item on the agenda. Let's look forward to a meeting here physically. Let's hope that COVID will become a thing of the past and we can get rid of this petitioning and we can have a group gathering. Wish you good health. Thank you very much. Friends of the media, at the joint meeting just now, we followed up on the progress of implementation of the 52 recommendations in the Thematic Study Report. The police devoted manpower to look into the recommendations. As the police said earlier on in the joint meeting, the police have already completed all the 52 recommendations. The police have been improving or enhancing the police work, and the IPCC would like to acknowledge the effort on the part of the police. Most of the recommendations just now were in connection with the use of force, and during the joint meeting, the police have already reported to us in detail all the measures. In terms of the use of force, myself and the IPCC members and the Secretariat, at the end of last month, I visited the Police Tactical Unit headquarters to observe the training of the use of less lethal weapons, the latest armored personal vehicles, and also the scenario-based training and drills. We observed how the police used different levels of force and tactics to deal with various scales of disturbances. 4 IPCC members also donned the anti-riot gear and took part in the drills and experienced how the squad faced up to the severe challenges, and they tried to understand all the complaints that are likely to arise from the operation, and that enabled us, the IPCC, to assess all these complaints in a more accurate manner. As I always said, complaints are serious business. The IPCC would definitely deal with each and every complaint in a fair and impartial manner. A good complaint system should be tackling the source of the problems. In the course of handling complaints, the objective is to understand the ins and outs of the matters and also to understand the basis of the complaints and then take a decision in a fair and impartial manner. And this is to tackle the problems at source. If in the course of complaints or handling the complaints there is misunderstanding or there are areas that the police could have done differently, the IPCC would also make the recommendations. We have to understand the legislative requirements and the police work. If the police can improve their service in the long run, it will minimize complaints. And this is precisely the purpose of the two-tier complaints handling system. Other than the improvement measures in connection with the Thematic Study Report, over the past 13 years, the IPCC has made over 200 recommendations to the police covering different areas of policing work in terms of the quality of work. There's some service quality improvement initiative, the SQII. Now, all these SQIIs concerns the improvement of the police equipment, the use of communication technology, and improve the protocol. In the newsletter, we have highlighted the enforcement against traffic offences. The police have been making constant improvement and enhance the quality of service. That will contribute to better confidence of the public in the police, and also the confidence in the complaint system. The IPCC would reach out to the community and liaise with the stakeholders and the members of the public, as well as the media, for better exchanges, for better understanding, and that way people will understand the IPCC's work that much more. I hand you over to Clement to brief you on the publicity and education and the latest initiative in this regard, and then our SG, Daniel, will be briefing you on the cover story of the 29th newsletter, and also the latest complaint numbers arising the POEs and the progress of our scrutiny. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Friends of the media, like the Chair said a moment ago, the IPCC's work has always been adopting a double-pronged approach rather than sticking to the evidence-based principle. We also would scrutinize the complaint cases and analyze the causes of the complaints and the trend. Over the past 13 years, we have made well over 200 improvement recommendations to help the police improve the quality of service. All these improvement recommendations consist of areas that have to do with the livelihood. In this newsletter, the cover story is focusing on the enforcement against traffic offences. We are pleased that all the improvement recommendations have been proactively followed up by the police. It's because of this reason that the number of complaints has been trending down. Since 2009, since that IPCC became a statutory body, we have well over 3,000 or 3,800 complaints. It's come down to the recent 1,300 complaints annually. Well, in terms of livelihood, people's mobility, transport, these are the daily lives. I'm sure that you must have experienced the traffic congestion and how irritating and annoying this is. In Hong Kong, there is a high traffic volume with a lot of pedestrians and people, and the vehicular traffic are always vying for the right of way. And this is the source of disputes. When the frontline police officers turn up on the scene to deal with the traffic incidents, many times disputes and frictions might arise, and this will give rise to complaints. In the light of the trend of complaints over the years, the traffic-related allegations would take up about 20% of the total number of allegations. So in this latest newsletter of the IPCC, our cover story shares with the members of the public the allegations about traffic offense. We've highlighted 3 examples for the members of the public to understand how the improvement system is working. The IPCC would scrutinize the complaints and also analyze the trend of complaints, and we would make recommendations as to how the police can make improvements. All these improvement recommendations we like to achieve a certain objective. Now the police would respond and follow up on these recommendations, so we analyze what effects we have achieved as a result of that. Other than the IPCC's recommendations with a view to minimizing complaints, communication and the understanding of the right of the complainants will also be important. Like Madam Chair said a moment ago, complaints are really very solemn business. We have to treat them with all due seriousness. The complainants can lodge a complaint against the police neglect, but they do have the duty and obligation to make sure that they would make available the evidence and the means of communication to tie in with the IPCC or to tie in with the CAPO's investigation, so that these two-tier complaint system will be able to fulfill the best possible result. We will, through various channels like this press briefing today and other outreach programs like visit to schools and professional bodies, like talks and other publications and the social media online, we like to resort to all these different means to publicize to the members of the public the implementation of the improvement recommendations in order to disseminate the right message to the public, and also the right and also the duty people have in lodging complaints. Now, we are driving change, building trust together. This is very much our theme. And through the improvement recommendation, we can drive changes, and we can drive improvement on the part of the police. We hope that we can work together and build trust together to buttress the mutual trust between IPCC, the police, and the members of the public, and also the public trust in the two-tier complaint handling system. I'd like to hand you over to the SG, Daniel, who will be taking you through the content of the newsletter and also the progress of scrutinizing these complaints. Thank you very much, Clement, Chairman of the Publicity Committee. The Chairman and Madam Chair already highlighted the way forward. We'd like to tackle the source of the problems and not just the symptoms. Through the SQII, we very much hope that the police will be able to enhance the quality of service and minimize the number of complaints. I don't propose to go into many detail about it. Let me turn now to the newsletter, and then I'll be talking about the complaint arising from the disturbances. When you read the newsletters, we would focus on individual cases. Now we have highlighted 3 subjects: the SQII, how we can make recommendations to the police with a view to improving the procedures in order to minimize complaints. Now, all these 3 subjects have to do with the livelihood. Now, first off, the traffic offense. In terms of complaint numbers, this is taking up 20% of the complaints. If you think about it, this is terribly important because the police is a large department, and these traffic complaints take up 20% of the overall complaint cases. So we would focus our attention on the improvement of the law enforcement against traffic police. Now, by way of statistics in terms of traffic numbers, in terms of investigation into injury arising from accidents.
數咧係着咗1/4嘅。
It amounts to 24%, 1/4, and then the remaining 76% are involved enforcement, law enforcement. So in which issuing summons constitute the most. It's like 42% of those complaints. So we would like to focus on the law enforcement, and then whether we can continue to improve that. In this newsletter, we have 3 themes. The first one is when there is an accident, when the police arrive at the site, at the scene. Very often, the drivers want to make a peace deal. And there are dozens of those complaints that after they reconciliate, but they in fact revoked actually the decision, and then the police becomes the center of conflict. So the conflict or the dispute would accuse the police of actually favoring a certain party. And the second complaint is that the police really persuades us to make reconciliation. So under the misinformation, then we make the deal. And there are even complaints saying that at that particular time the car was being moved, and then the police say that there is no actually any movements of the car involved. And so that we found that the police are really in a difficult situation, because both parties cannot arrive at a consensus, and then the police become was sandwiched by the 2 parties. So we will suggest that the police would put down all the details on the scene. And then if the 2 parties agreed to strike a deal, then he would put down the details in a notebook, undersigned by the 2 parties, to assured that they agree on all the details, and so that they cannot actually return to say that they did not or did that, or that they were doing that under misinformation, etc. So the police have already revised the guideline and advising the frontline colleagues to have the report undersigned by both parties. And with that taken into effect, that the number of complaints is significantly dropped. And so we think that this way of doing and handling traffic dispute could be lowered in terms of complaint. This is the first SQI. The second is issuing tickets. There are complaints. That often took place in the Wan Chai Western District, and then the cars, in fact, that have double parking, triple parking, etc. The complaints to 999 include, say, that the illegal parking, etc. And the fact is that do we want the police to issue ticket, or to actually focus on the law and enforcement? But definitely the police has to handle all the situation. But there are complaints saying that after they call 999, and then there is a delay in handling these complaints. And then they said that the one who received the call will be in fault because there is no immediate action being taken. And likewise is for the police who was deployed to the scene. So our review is that whether that should be a kind of a standard answer for all incoming 999 call, telling the public that we will dispatch the appropriate police to the scene. And then definitely we need to judge the situation, whether that we have enough personnel to handle those circumstances. So we are thinking that shall we streamline the ticketing procedure? Right now that people suggest e-ticketing. A few years back in our meeting, there were already suggestions of solving the problem by the technology and increase the effectiveness and efficiency of issuing tickets. And likewise to reduce complaints related to issuing the illegal parking tickets, etc. Sometimes that there are mistakes in a ticket, like that there is a mistake in the time, in the location, in the name, etc. And then, e-ticket can solve all this problem. And then, with a button, there is GPS, and then there is also the email who helps to expedite the issue of the ticket. So after handling all these complaints, we discovered that in recent years the number have significantly reduced. The third is casualty assistance in traffic accidents. When there is an accident, if the injured has a sick leave for over 3 days, then the people involved they can claim the assistance from the social welfare department. There are tables that forms they need to fill. The first one is the injured. The second part need to be filled by the police. The police need to jot down the car the plate, the number of the car involved, and also the insurance number. There are complaints saying that the time taken by the police to send the form to the social welfare department is too long, and then they will causing delays in getting the claims or in the assistance. Because, as long as the form is not in the hands of the social welfare, that the injured will be defected, and then some of them really depends on the daily income. And we understand that, the delay is caused by not having access to the insurance documents of the injured. So we are thinking whether that even before the police get hold of the insurance document, can that form be sent to the social welfare department? According to the police, in case there's a very serious accident, then the form need to be sent within 2 days. In case there is a less serious accident, that the whole procedure should be completed within 5 days. Well, then the colleagues would be in a dilemma if they could not get hold of those information needed. So after talking with CAPO, the conclusion is that even before they get all those information needed, they could send the form over to the social welfare department so that the social welfare department can process that case as soon as possible. And then we also observed that the papers sent by the police to the social welfare department is still done under a weird fax machine. And there is no mechanism to ensure that the social welfare department actually receive those. And there is no particular person who's responsible for those documents. And right now, the police have established a mechanism to ensure that the forms and applications are well received, and in turn, without delay. SQII could reduce a complaint in that regard and help the public, in particular in those three aspects, and to have more and better services from the police. Right now, I would like to report to you the complaints since 2011 relating to the riots. There are 618 complaints, and then the allegation is 1,012. Our reportable cases is 1,300 cases. And for minor allegations, like 765, 70% of minor complaints, including misconduct, 27%, and negligence of duty, 24%, the misconduct, 42%. And very serious complaints is 347, 30% of the total complaint, and the bulk is 16%. The unnecessary use of authority, assault at 12%. In the past, when we investigate this complaint, the members have already made 149 observations, and the attendance rate keeps at 100%. CAPO has submitted to us 583 the reportable complaints. It constitutes 94% of the total complaint. The remaining 35 still need to handle by the CAPO, and then within of the 35, 31 are still under investigation and litigation. There are 31 of this. And right now, CAPO is handling 4 of these complaints, and the 4 are still under the litigation. Most often is the case has been concluded, and then it is now in CAPO to handle these cases. Among the 583 cases, IPCC has approved 536 cases. It's like 92% of the total cases. Among the approved 20 cases is now in the hands of the members to endorse. Of the 536 approved cases, the comprehensive investigation is about 166. Within this 166 cases, only 98 cases with the complainant identified, and then they demand comprehensive investigation.
For the remaining 42 cases, the complainant did not offer any assistance. They lodged a complaint and they walked away. But the CAPO is of the view that there is enough information to conduct investigation, and they conducted the full investigation. The number is 46, and there are 26 cases in which the complainant would like to withdraw the complaints, but having seen the evidence, CAPO considered that further investigation should be undertaken, and they did the full investigation. So 98 plus 42 plus 26, the total number of full investigation is 166 cases. The other category is non-pursuable. Of the 536 complaints, 228 are unpursuable. If you've been following the IPCC's work, there are two types of unpursuable cases. First, the complainant doesn't offer assistance. Second, even the complainant offers assistance, CAPO cannot find the police complaint lead. Now let me give you the breakdowns. No assistance, 193 out of 228, 193 in which the complainant offered no assistance. 35, the complainant offered assistance, but CAPO could not identify the police complaint lead. For various reasons, probably the complainant's information was rather limited. Like he may say that during the riot, I saw the police in red, and so on. Or the complainant might show a footage which is very, very blurred, very fast moving, and there was no way the call sign or the police number could be identified. So this is 35 plus 193, and number is 228. Withdrawal of complaints, 132. There are 10 cases that are dealt with by other means. The total number is 536. You may be concerned that of the 166 full investigated cases, what are the outcome? Of these 166 fully investigated, 248 allegations. Substantiated cases, the number stands at 23, including 7 neglect of duty, 3 misconduct, 6 impoliteness, 2 unnecessary use of authority, 5 using offensive language. Totally 28 substantiated cases there. There is one case that are not fully substantiated. There was a wrongdoing, but not 100%. That's a case of neglect of duty. There are 7 allegations that are substantiated without complaints, including 5 cases of neglect of duty, 2 misconduct, a total of 7 cases there. Unsubstantiated, there are 73 cases. I don't propose to give you any further breakdown. There are 73 unsubstantiated cases. 139 did not have any fault. There are 5 cases that were false, meaning that the complaint wasn't really accurate. It was a false allegation. 4 cases of assault, 1 case of threat. Now 4 cases of assault. These cases went through court proceedings, and the complainant lodged a complaint, and the court sat in judgment and found that there was no evidence to substantiate the assault cases. So there were 5 false cases of complaint. Since December last year through to now, it's been 5 or 6 months now. We have an additional 4 cases. I've given you the list of 31 cases that are unsubstantiated or substantiated rather than reported. There are 31 cases. I'd like to let you know that since the last joint meeting through to now, for these past 6 months, we have 4 additional allegations that are substantiated. I'll let you have more information there. In 2019, November, a police officer used some impolite language, and that case was substantiated. Another case, also a use of impolite language, that was in 26th of December 2019. The complainant was a senior inspector. The 3rd allegation, 30th of October 2019, that happened in Tai Heng in Tuen Mun at the operation base or outside the base. A police officer used impolite language. Another case, 21st of July 2019, that's a police officer committed neglect of duty. Now what happened was someone called the Yuen Long police station to say that there is an assembly at a certain place. The police officer said, I've got the information, and the complainant asked him about the report number, and the policeman said, I will let you know later on because I'm dealing with other matters. But unfortunately, that police officer forgot to ring up the complainant about the number, and CAPO asked him about that, and he said that I forgot about it altogether, and that's a case of neglect of duty. So since the last meeting, there are 4 more cases, 3 involving the impolite language, and 1 case of neglect of duty. He forgot about the report number. So these are the numbers in connection with the complaints. Thank you. Now it's time for questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hands and identify yourself, please. Any questions? Now for the additional 4 substantiated cases, were the police officer subject to any disciplinary action? Now July 1st is upon us. The IPCC would ask the police to make a proper approach. You may send people to observe the situation. What particular request did you make to the police? Let me address the first question first. Now, for the 3 policemen and 1 senior inspector, they were given verbal advice. Right. July 1st, we have not received any information about any rallies and so on. Previously, we turned up because we got the information that rallies were going to be taking place. In order to facilitate our work, in order to facilitate our scrutiny of complaints arising from the rallies, we would turn up for observation. But as of now, the Secretariat has not received any notification of any rallies to be taking place. Right. According to IPCC's recommendation, the police officers in using force would have regard to the circumstances, the route of departure. Does the IPCC feel that the guidelines are inadequate and there are problems? Now, for the first 5 months, there are 400 or so complaints. How many cases are substantiated and how many are under investigation? There are cases of fabrication of evidence. Are they under investigation now? Let me address the first part of the question first. When we compiled the report, we saw that in the case of deployment of tear gas and also the MTR station, we noticed that there were no particular guidelines for the frontline officers as to how they should deal with the situation. In particular, the commanders, should the field commanders have special considerations that we are aware of, so that we know that the field commanders had these considerations. Now, of course, all these considerations are common sense in our view, but if in the internal guidelines all these are spelled out clearly, then it would facilitate the field commanders to handle the situation better. With all these guidelines, the members of the public would know where they stand in that kind of situation. We would like to avoid a situation where there is a communication gap, which can give rise to misunderstanding, and the public would be really bewildered as to what they are supposed to do. And we hope that the police would spell out all these in the guidelines so the frontline officers would know where they stand. 400 cases. 400 cases, so what cases are you talking about? Right, you talk about the complaints for the first 5 months, right? Right, there is a time lag there with the numbers. It doesn't mean we would receive the complaint report. Let's say there was a complaint last week. The CAPO will have to gather evidence, take statements, understand the case, and there is a bit of a time lag, and it would take a couple of months for them to deal with the complaints, and then they would submit the investigation report to us. It's only then that we would become aware of the content, the complainee, and so on. Gentleman's not speaking through. I believe that basically I can say that for these 430 cases, I may not receive all of them. I may receive some of them. As soon as they are done with the investigation, they will submit a report. As to how many we have received, I have to go back on the number, but I don't think there are many because it's not been a long time ago. But for last year's numbers, I can give you the numbers because there is a time lag with regard to these cases. The police said that the recommendations have been implemented. Are you happy with this? In the use of force, in particular in confined spaces, shopping malls and MTR station, there are no clear guidelines. Do you think that there is any further room for improvement in this regard?
Well, let's put it this way. Every joint meeting, right now we have the 7th report. And in fact, in every joint meeting, we have a report. And they will specify what has been implemented regarding the 2019 thematic study. I was one of the author. And then every time we submit the report, we will go back to the thematic study and our recommendations, and whether that they address the situation with documented in the report. Today is the 7th report. And we also have Senior Superintendent Terry Fong to explain the use of force. Oh, including myself, I have studied very carefully, and you can see that I have read every one of those recommendations, the 52 altogether. My conclusion is that they can basically handle those situations and then respond to the recommendation. Of course, we needed to look at the actual implementation. Last February, the 4th of February, we look at the temporary holding center in Hong Kong. We saw that they have computer, they have bought new equipment, increase personnel, facilities. I still remember that everyone have had risk band, and so that there is also a CCTV. And then if they need to go to the hospital, there's a special team to escort them to the hospital. So this is something related to HA. Then there altogether the 10 police stations have THAs set up. And then we also to visit the 999 Center in Hong Kong. You still remember they are on the 21st of July, and then they receive the 33,000, more than 33,000 within the few hours. I still remember this figure. So we visit that call center and the chair witnessed that, and then they saw there are changes so that, they can record those calls and explain to the caller that they have noted down the information, and if there is no further information, that call will end. And if really this jam, then the calls will be diverted to the district level. They also established the special team who work in the 999 call center before. They were urgently recruited for that. So on the 30th of last year, we visited PTU and then to witness how they train their staff. It's called scenario-based training. And then the 4 of us, in fact, wear the gear and then experience in person the difficulty of frontline police. And so other than reading the documents, we also have experience in the actual implementation. So I hope that I can answer your question. So you can hear me, right? Okay, the Secretary General have already explained to you, so I will not actually repeat that. And I just want to get a few comments on our visit to the PTU. Since the colonial rule, the equipment they use for anti-riot control was introduced, and then so that we have a good glimpse of what have been used during the past 50 to 60 years. At that time, the lethality is much higher than today. And so that people who are being injured will have more pain. Like the bullet, the bullet is really like the 2/3 of this water bottle. There are the trainers, including the chief of the academy, experience those the bullet themselves. And then today there are we said that the 4 members, they are all ladies, and they participate in the visit, and then they wear those gears. May is not too hot yet. It is quite depressing. And the 3 guys and 1 lady, then they personally experience the situation. We also heard and also were briefed that the equipments were much less lethal. And most of them had been deployed in defense Western countries in similar situation. They were all fabricated there, manufactured there, and we're just importing from those countries. So they have explained all this, and now it's already the 7th report. I became the chair of IPCC last year. And then so I know all of this. And then, of course, that Hong Kong is unique. Where there are no 2 equal cases. And you all know that Hong Kong is very the high population density. We are quite hot. And so this is very particular to Hong Kong. And then, well, you also heard about the traffic situation. And then there's one particular point about Hong Kongers because they are quite really hot-tempered. And then back to the 52 recommendations, police have explained, and then they have pledged that they will do everything possible to respond to the recommendations. And one of the main focus is to use the lethal equipments or weapons. But in order to protect the public and to protect law and enforcement, so that they need to be able to assure that people are being protected, and then they can enforce the law. 3 questions. First of all, just now the police said they have already responded to the 52 recommendations, and there will be 1 technical advisor, and then to give advice on the frontline colleagues, and then the other is about the low lethality of weapons. And so how can the police be ensure their effectiveness in the emergencies? And then there are still, second is about the 26 outstanding cases. What are they? And the third is, and there's an unanswered question the last time. You are new to the IPCC, how you keep that the IPCC to be transparent to the public. And then right now, the 3rd anniversary of the 2019, how do you keep a good relation between the public and the police? So I will answer the 3rd question. You said that this question is not answered. I don't remember which one. The last month, last meeting is on March, but we did not have that. Is because that was the time when we have the 5th wave of COVID. Well, the last meeting is on the last week of February. Since we already know that we are going to have the 5th wave, then we cannot have the meeting there. So that weekend, we tried to get hold of as many as the rapid tests as possible. And mask, as you all see, there is a box of that mask on your table. And then we succeed in doing that because those tests are distributed to the members so that they can protect themselves and their family. And on that particular weekend, we found that 20% were tested positive. This is not an individual fault. This is the situation in Hong Kong. So we stopped, and so the secretary asked people to do all the necessary preventive measures. And you all know that the Security Bureau we have done a lot of things, and I also hope that we don't have the sixth wave of COVID. And because of the fifth wave, well, we did not have a meeting, and so we did not actually respond this because we did not have a meeting. Well, in fact, the question was asked last year at the last meeting of last year. So about the relationship between the public and the police. So without that March meeting, so we did not have the press conference. Well, in the first meeting, there is no live Q&A. That was June last year. September and December, yes, we had meeting. Well, I hope that in the next meeting we don't have those screen and then the mask. Well, about public-police relationship, this is not within the scope of our jurisdiction. We are actually one of the two tiers of the monitoring mechanism. We'll be doing that fairly, and then in handling each one of those complaints. Complaint is a very serious matter. Everyone needs to be handled discreetly. In particular, the complainee is a police, and then they are executing their duty. So based on the evidence and facts, we will handle each one of those complaints fairly. Police relationship with the public is not within our mandate, but we hope that our work can enhance the reputation and trust of the police among the public. The police is a Hong Kong police force, and the duty is to protect our safety, and then we have to trust the police. So the reputation and trustworthiness is very important. And we are being appointed by the chief executive, so that we need to do our duty fairly. It's not because of the public and police relationship that we are doing this. I'd always reiterate that not only to the press, if there are complaints, please tell us your name. And tell us how you could be contacted. We want to hear your complaint clearly and loud, and then you need to give us your name and how we can contact you. So it's not about the relationship. We welcome all of you to tell us the fact. The secretary has already told you about the number, and there are the cases. We have undertaken the full investigation. Sometimes we could not find the complainant. Sometimes the complainant doesn't want to come forth and give us the facts about the name and contact. But still, even that, we will keep on investigating and examination. Like maybe getting the CCTV in a particular street, so that we can make up the scenario again. So we are the second tier of this mechanism. So we would really urge you to give us the evidence, the fact. We will handle it fairly. Please remind me of your two other questions. First of all, is about the tactical advisor. well, in the emergency, how can you implement this? And then about the 26 complaints that are still under investigation.
For the 26 cases, I defer to the SG. He has all the information there, which he would mull over. About the technical consultant, we saw what happened in 2019. Things were happening very, very fast. I mean, not just at that time, even now, it would be hard for you to respond sufficiently swiftly. I can imagine that the police have undergone intensive training, and of course, an expert by their side would be of help. But you can expect people in an air-conditioned comfort who can analyze the situation carefully, corroborated by a third party. But things are happening in a flash. For a decision to be taken in a split second, it would be different from a decision taken in air-conditioned comfort. Right. Let me supplement the issue. The chair will lead the team to go ahead. I remember when the chair first assumed office, she said that, Daniel, you have to be fair when scrutinizing the cases. You have to go by the evidence in a black and white manner. So this is very much the instruction given to me by the chair. The chair is sitting right next to me, and she said, you have to have all these considerations. So she knows that I've been here for 10 years, and her instruction was very simple, very straightforward. We go by the evidence in a black and white manner, and there is no way of anything being distorted. Everything is under the sun, and this is very straightforward. Second, about the technical consultant, this is someone who understands the local situation. Like if you're living in Bangkok, you know the Bangkok MTR station very well, all the exits and so on. If you're a technical consultant dealing with an MTR station, you would know about all the last detail. And this consultant will be able to provide information about the geographical situation. This person must have undergone training at the PTU. He must know how to resort to the less lethal weapons and how many officers are on the front line, and give advice to the field commander accordingly. Now, for the 26 cases, and these are withdrawal of cases, let me give you two breakdowns there. There are two cases of the 26. There are 27 allegations. There are two allegations of neglect of duty that were substantiated. So CAPO would not, because of the withdrawal of complaints, did not submit the information to us. Now we would consider whether we can have the definite findings. Now there are two allegations that they are substantiated. There are 25 that had no fault. According to the manual, now why do you see these two categories? That's because our manual would not allow withdrawal of complaints that are unsubstantiated. We have to take the statement from the complainant before we can determine whether this is unsubstantiated. So of the 27 cases, there are two that are unsubstantiated. Now, I'll give you more details about these two cases. One happened on 13th of October 2019. The complainant asked a sergeant to produce, the sergeants were asked to produce the warrants. The two sergeants failed to do so. CAPO looked at the situation. There was a footage that showed that the two didn't show the warrant card, and there was no justifiable reason why they failed to produce the warrant card. So that was a substantiated case of neglect of duty, despite no evidence given by the complainant. The other one is about a policeman. On 14th of November 2019, there was an underage person who was arrested by the police. In absence of his parents, a cautionary statement was taken that there's an underage person. We need to have the guardian or the parents in his presence of a statement to be taken. The CAPO looked at all the records. Indeed, the statement was taken in absence of the parents. So the case was substantiated. It shows that CAPO would scrutinize all the documents and all the evidence, all the CCTV footages. If they find that there is evidence to show that the policeman failed to act properly, that will be dealt with accordingly. Again, there was a verbal advice given.
From RTHK. So my first question has to do with a previous Chinese question. So about the 52 suggestions that you put forward to the police force, how would you evaluate the police performance in carrying out these suggestions? And would you follow up or monitor the progress further? Or is this already, closed file now? Is there any area you find further improvement is actually needed? For example, the use of force. And my second question has to do with the complaints findings. So you said that from December to now, there are 4 more allegations found true. Apart from these 4 allegations, is there any update on the figures that you could provide? Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm going to deal with the first part, and I'll leave my SG to deal with the second part of the 4 further substantiated cases since the last time we met. I believe that is what you're talking about. I will deal with the first. We have answered that to quite some extent in Chinese. I'm going to repeat most of what we said in English, not necessarily identically in sequence. Now, of the 52 suggestions, right, most of them have been acceded to in fact, all of them have been addressed. Almost most of them in the same way. Now, they have come in a different sequence, and 13 of them came today because they all come under use of force. The police have apparently used a lot of time and effort, which can be seen, in researching the matter, in taking facts and advice in terms of research and field work from overseas, because this is where the weapons come from. And that being the case, they need to go back to the source. So that is evident. They have also been paying close attention to cases that have been adjudicated in the court, of course, in Hong Kong. Now, that has taken some time because it takes quite some time for cases to go to court, and that explains the time. It is evident that there has been a lot of effort. It is evident that there is quite a bit of goodwill from everyone involved. Suggestions have been taken to heart. As I've explained in Cantonese just now, we visited the PTU unit late last month, in May this year, and we were introduced to an array of weapons used since before the handover. And those were weapons that would cause a lot more pain, perhaps permanent damage, and I actually showed the friends here that some, quotation marks, bullets were even about 2/3 of the size of this bottle, with a very pointed edge. So that was what we saw. And those were used by the police force in Hong Kong many years ago. And we have now improved and progressed to a certain stage where the concern, the main concern, is less lethal weapons, all right, as much as possible. The weapons must be kept as low grade as possible in terms of pain, in terms of suffering. And we've also seen frontline police officers, including, I believe, the commandant at the PTU, apply on himself the weapons that we were investigating, we were observing that day. So we had a fair idea of the suffering, quotation marks, the word suffering, that would be imposed on the recipient. 4 members of this particular council, 1 lady and 3 gentlemen, also themselves participated in the scenario exercise that was implemented that day. They were in full gear, in full riot gear. And as I said, luckily it was not the hottest of days in Hong Kong. It was only in May, and it was a rainy day. The feedback was it was very difficult. So one had to see things in context. And so the police have been doing a lot of field work, trying to explain to us what work they were undertaking, what improvements they were going to introduce. Of course, this is always a work in progress. The world evolves and weapons change over time. So to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, we are pleased to see the feedback we have received. And all 52 suggestions have been addressed one way or another. And we've seen the latest batch today, which is the last. Thank you. And I'll leave the second part of your question, the 4 substantiated cases, to my Secretary General, Mr. Mui.
To answer your question, apart from the 4 substantiated allegations since last time, I do not have any further figures as to how many cases found unsubstantiated, no fault. I do not have those figures in my hand now. I can only tell you that since last time, there were 4 more allegations found substantiated. But if you want more detail, actually you can come to me after this conference.
Right. The IPCC visited the new water cannon and the new armored vehicle. When will these vehicles be deployed? In Hong Kong, I mean, the situation is getting calmer and calmer. Do you see the need for the introduction of these new vehicles? During the anti-extradition protest, how many police officers were disciplined, and what are the disciplinary actions? Well, I will take the first question. For the numbers, I defer to Mr. Mui, the Secretary General. The saber-tooth tiger vehicle. As to when exactly this is going to be used, and this is an operational matter for the police, they have to take the decision themselves in accordance with the guidelines. And this is not a question for us. Second, I don't really hope to see in Hong Kong any riots, any disturbances, any conflicts. We're all Hong Kong people. We want the best for Hong Kong, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that we don't really need to have the police. We don't really need to have this equipment. We need the police not because there are so many thugs. That's because we want to maintain law and order. Personally, my colleagues also, we very much hope that Hong Kong will progress. We have to fight the pandemic. We have to resume normal life in Hong Kong. And then we can scale new heights here in Hong Kong. I defer to Daniel. If you've been following the IPCC's work, disciplines come in different ways, depending on the gravity of the cases and how serious the wrongdoing was. Now, from recollection, I don't have the record. My recollection is that all of them are subject to verbal advisory. They're not really serious, like impolite language and neglect of duty of a minor nature.
即係你可以留。
So if maybe you can stay behind, and then we can look further into those cases. I would like to add also, our chair said that the complaint is a very serious matter. The chair of our communication and publicity, Clement, also mentioned that. I just want to cite a case. During the protest, most of the complaint, one actually made 10 complaints. 9 has been handled, but he never showed up. Most are unpursuable. So you can imagine who actually can make 10 complaints, but he never showed up for the 9. He never showed up for the 9. So that we are just actually abusing the resources of this complaint mechanism. So I would like to take this opportunity to appeal to the public, as what the chair said. Making a complaint is a very serious matter. If you really want to make a complaint, please come forth and give evidence. If you are making up a story, then it will affect other people's access to this mechanism. So I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate this point. Thank you. I would like to add that, as Mr. Mui said, the 999 call center. I think that you are familiar with the context. That some people get called, appealed to actually call the 999 and said that complaining at the police, saying that you have not enough capacity. Most of my friends are from the industry. I'm a barrister. And they want to, in fact, jam the system, and they are not actually trying to make a report. And then sometimes that even the system of the bank would collapse because of that, jamming the whole system. Why do you make a complaint afterwards? And then you're wasting the resources of the society, and a lot of the top academia asking me, why do you still need to handle those complaints? I think that I will throw this question back to you, and I think that Hong Kong, we need to work together and then to move forward and then to recover from the past. Stay safe.